This was a wrongful execution, but it didn't start with a crime. It started with a father standing barefoot in the dirt, screaming for his children. On December 23, 1991, Cameron Todd Willingham lost everything. The fire took his home. It took his 3 baby girls. But the state of Texas wasn't finished taking things from him. They looked at the ashes of a tragedy and saw a cold-blooded murder. They didn't see it because of a witness or a confession or a weapon. They saw it because of science. Except it wasn't science. It was folklore. It was mythology masquerading as forensic fact. And by the time the experts realized they were wrong, it was too late. Corsicana, Texas is a place where everyone knows everyone, and where justice is expected to be swift. When the smoke cleared on that December morning, the community was heartbroken. 3 children, all under the age of 3, were gone. The grief was suffocating, but in the days that followed, that grief curdled into suspicion. In the wake of such a loss, the human need for a villain is overwhelming. An accident feels senseless, but a murder provides a target for the anger. Cameron Todd Willingham became that target. He was poor. He had a criminal record. He listened to heavy metal music. He did not fit the mold of the grieving father the town expected to see. But a man cannot be convicted on his taste in music alone. The state needed evidence. To find it, they turned to the fire marshals. These men walked through the charred remains of the house and read the burns like tea leaves. They claimed the fire told a story of a man pouring lighter fluid around his sleeping children. They called their findings ironclad science. Here is what makes this case even worse. The science used to send Willingham to death row has since been completely debunked. It was not merely questioned, it was proven impossible. The fire that killed Cameron Todd Willingham didn't stop burning in 1991. It continued into the courtroom, fueled by junk science that would eventually convince a jury to kill an innocent man. It was 2 days before Christmas. The Willingham house was small, a wooden frame structure that was essentially a tinderbox. Cameron was home with his 3 daughters, 2-year-old Amber, and the 1-year-old twins, Carmen and Cameron. His wife, Stacy, had left earlier to pay bills. Willingham told investigators he was asleep when the fire started. He was woken not by a smoke alarm, but by the sound of his daughter crying, "Daddy." The air was already thick and heavy. When he opened his eyes, the house wasn't just smoking, it was dark with soot. He sat up, and that's when the heat hit him. He described jumping out of bed and seeing an orange glow reflecting off the hallway wall. He attempted to move toward the children's room, but the hallway had become an inferno. The heat in a house fire is a physical force. It sears the lungs and melts plastic instantly. Willingham claimed he tried to go back for them, but was driven back by the sheer intensity of the thermal layer descending from the ceiling. He stumbled out the front door, barefoot, wearing only jeans. He pushed his car away from the flames to prevent an explosion, and then attempted to re-enter the home. Neighbors had to physically restrain him. He was screaming, pacing, and distraught. However, the police on the scene did not see a grieving father. They saw a man who had survived when his children hadn't. They noted that his feet weren't burned enough. They noted that he moved his car. They noted the lack of soot in his airways. Confirmation bias set in before the embers were even cold. The authorities decided right then that his story didn't add up. That's a problem, because once investigators decide on a conclusion, they often stop looking for the truth and start looking for the proof. And in 1991, an arson investigator looking for proof of a crime could find it anywhere they looked. Manuel Vasquez and Douglas Fogg were the deputy fire marshals assigned to the case. Vasquez was considered an expert, having investigated hundreds of fires. He walked into the blackened shell of the Willingham home and began to point out the signs. To understand the error here, it is necessary to understand the state of fire investigation in the early 90s. It was not based on physics or chemistry, it was based on heuristics, rules of thumb passed down from older investigators to younger ones. It was knowledge gained by looking at fires, not by understanding the dynamics of heat. The prosecution focused on specific evidence found at the scene. First, the crazed glass. The windows in the house were shattered in a web-like pattern. Vasquez testified that this crazing was caused by a fire that burned too fast and too hot, a hallmark of a liquid accelerant like lighter fluid. He told the jury that normal wood fires do not break glass in this manner. That is not possible. Modern science has established that crazed glass is caused by rapid cooling, usually when cold water from a fire hose hits a hot window. It has nothing to do with accelerants. It has nothing to do with the speed of the fire. It was a myth. Next, they identified pour patterns. The investigators found irregular, puddle-shaped burns on the floor and under the aluminum threshold of the front door. They called these puddle configurations. To the investigators, this was the smoking gun. It appeared as though someone had poured a liquid on the floor and ignited it. But there was a phenomenon they didn't understand: flashover. Flashover occurs when the heat in a room builds up to a point where every combustible object, the furniture, the carpet, the drapes, ignites simultaneously. It creates an inferno that consumes all the oxygen. When flashover happens, the heat is so intense, it pushes down to the floor. It melts synthetic carpets, it chars wood, and it creates patterns that look indistinguishable from pour patterns. The investigators were looking at the natural aftermath of a fully involved room fire, and they were characterizing it as murder. They found over 20 indicators of arson: V patterns on the walls, deep charring on the wood, burn marks under the bed. Every single one of them has since been proven to occur in accidental fires that reach flashover. There was no accelerant found in the lab tests on the floorboards. None. But the investigators told the jury the fire was so hot it consumed all the evidence. They created a narrative that was scientifically impossible but rhetorically perfect. The trial began in August 1992. The prosecution had their science, but they also intended to ensure the jury despised Cameron Todd Willingham. They needed a motive. The question hung in the air: why would a father kill his own babies? This marked the beginning of the character assassination. The prosecution highlighted his past domestic issues and his temper. Then they took a turn into the absurd. They introduced his posters, Iron Maiden, Led Zeppelin, and pointed to the skull tattoo on his arm as evidence of a disturbed mind. A psychologist who had never treated Willingham testified that he was a sociopath. Even the fire investigators contributed to this narrative, claiming the burn pattern on the floor resembled the shape of a pentagram. They looked at a random burn scar on a floor in a house that had reached flashover and told a Texas jury in 1992 that it was a satanic symbol. This was not evidence. This was theater, designed to play on the fears of the community. Then came the final nail: Johnny Webb, a jailhouse informant. Webb claimed that while they were in a cell together, Willingham confessed to setting the fire to cover up abuse. Webb was facing a long sentence for robbery. After his testimony, his sentence was miraculously reduced. Years later, he would recant, admitting he lied to save himself. But at the time, the jury believed him. The combination was lethal. The unshakable science of the fire marshals, combined with the evil character of the defendant, sealed his fate. The jury deliberated and returned with a guilty verdict. They sentenced him to death. He maintained his innocence, stating simply, "I did not do this." But in the face of such science, his words meant nothing. While Willingham sat on death row, the world outside was changing. The National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, released new standards, specifically NFPA 921. This document brought the scientific method to fire investigation, testing the old myths, the crazed glass, the V patterns, and destroying them. Dr. Gerald Hurst, a Cambridge-educated chemist and a genuine fire expert, entered the picture. In 2004, just weeks before Willingham's scheduled execution, the family reached out to him. They sent him the files, the photos, and the reports from 1991. Hurst sat down to review the case, expecting to find a clever arsonist. Instead, he found a disaster. He later stated that he read the list of arson indicators provided by Vasquez and Fogg and almost cried. Every single element they cited as proof of murder was, in reality, proof of a natural, accidental fire. Hurst wrote a report that was devastating to the prosecution's case. He explained that the pour patterns were ventilation patterns. He explained that the crazed glass was thermal shock. He demonstrated that the fire likely started from a space heater or faulty wiring, and once it hit flashover, It created all the signs the marshals had misread. He concluded that there was absolutely no evidence of arson. None. It was an accidental fire. A tragedy, yes. But a crime? No. This was the pivot. This should have been the moment the system paused. A renowned scientist was now on record saying, "You are about to kill an innocent man based on junk science." The report was sent to the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. They did not hold a hearing. They did not call Hearst to testify. They did not even convene in person. They faxed in their votes. The vote was unanimous. Denied. The case went to Governor Rick Perry. He had the power to grant a 30-day stay. Just 30 days to examine the new science and determine if a mistake was being made. He refused. On February 17, 2004, the clock ran out. Willingham's family gathered outside. Inside, Willingham was strapped to the gurney. He was angry. He was not the quiet, submissive victim. He was a man who knew he was being murdered by the state. His final words were defiant. He said, "The only statement I want to make is that I am an innocent man convicted of a crime I did not commit. I have been persecuted for 12 years for something I did not do." He cursed the prosecutor. He cursed the system. And then the chemicals flowed. Cameron Todd Willingham was dead. Years later, the Texas Forensic Science Commission hired another expert, Dr. Craig Baylor. Baylor wrote a scathing report stating that the investigators in 1991 seemed to possess no understanding of fire dynamics. He called their methodology characteristic of mystics or psychics, not scientists. The state of Texas admitted the science was flawed. They admitted the methods were wrong, but they have never officially admitted they executed an innocent man. They call it finality. It is often believed that the justice system is a machine for finding the truth. But in the case of Cameron Todd Willingham, it functioned as a machine for processing grief. The community needed a monster, so one was built out of heavy metal posters and misunderstood burn patterns. The tragedy here involves more than the death of one man. It involves the replacement of one tragedy with another. A father who had just lost his babies was told he was responsible. He was gaslit with bad science until the very end. Science has improved. We now understand flashover and the mechanics of breaking glass. But science can only explain how a fire burned. It cannot fix a system that values a conviction over the truth. There are people sitting in prison right now, convicted by the same folklore that killed Willingham. The experts have changed their minds, but the cell doors remain locked. It leaves a question that the state of Texas is too afraid to answer. If the science was wrong, the testimony was coerced, and the man is dead. Who is the real criminal here? If you want stories like this, subscribe to my channel for more.